This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. The Palestine Liberation Organization's parliament ended its meeting in Algiers today, but not before making a symbolic declaration that could nevertheless alter the reality of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Tom Fenton in Algiers has our first report.
40 years of pent-up emotion released by a single declaration, an independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. After endless years of being dogged by UN resolutions dictating their future, Palestinians are now bubbling with confidence.
No force on earth can deprive my people of the right to statehood.
We can say, yes, we have a state. We are Palestinians, and the state is in the West Bank and Gaza. I mean, it's very spiritually uplifting.
And to underline all this, Arafat was playing statesman this afternoon in Algiers. He laid the first stone of the first Palestinian embassy in the first country to recognize his independent Palestinian state. But in reality, the declaration was more psychological than real. The situation of Palestinians today is little different from what it was yesterday. It does remove one of the obstacles to Middle East peace talks, the PLO's refusal to talk to the Israelis, but leaves the other obstacle firmly in place, Israel's refusal to talk to the PLO. In the final analysis, the Palestinians have made this declaration of independence for themselves.
Although it's partly a public relations exercise aimed at world opinion, it's mainly intended to encourage the young Palestinians who've been leading the uprising in the occupied territories for almost a year now. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Algiers.
It had all the trappings of an Independence Day anywhere else. Confetti and flags and the sonorous sounding of drums. They were celebrating, these villagers, the declaration in the far-off capital of Algiers. But people in the territories knew they had brought it about through 11 months of stones. They were celebrating themselves.
They have been injected with new blood, new life, with which to continue with the uprising until we achieve our freedom.
From before dawn this morning, troops sealed off the occupied territories, blocking every road, every lane between Israel and the West Bank, unconsciously and ironically defining possible borders for the new state declared in Algiers. The entire Israeli government was attending a memorial service for David Ben-Gurion, the architect of Israeli independence. Prime Minister Shamir dismissed the declaration as one more step in the war of terrorists against Israel. For once, the whole cabinet was behind him.
I don't believe it's realistic enough to change the situation.
The situation on the ground hadn't changed at all, of course. There were more troops on the West Bank and Gaza today than at any time since the territories were captured in the '67 war. With all their manpower and materiel, the Israelis were firmly in control. The only thing they did not have is a solution.
They are really worried because they also now must face reality. It is so difficult for the Israelis to face reality because they want to believe that there is no Palestinian people.
What started as a bunch of unruly kids less than a year ago, today displayed the discipline, the coherence, the consciousness of a national movement. The lives of people on the West Bank will not change because of Algiers. Their minds have been changed already. Bob Simon, CBS News, on the West Bank.
In Washington, the State Department rejected the Palestinian Independence Declaration, saying only negotiations can actually settle the issue. The President and President-elect gave higher marks to the whole package of PLO initiatives. That overall package includes support of the UN resolution that implicitly recognizes Israel's right to exist. Wyatt Andrews reports.
In Washington, the PLO statement impressed both President Reagan and the man who will inherit the Middle East stalemate in just 2 months.
Well, it does represent a change from their previous attitude.
If indeed there is specific recognition of Security Council Resolution 242, that would be a very important step forward.
But what is Arafat up to? Most experts give him credit for a skillful piece of maneuvering that makes the PLO look more moderate, but which stops short of actually recognizing Israel.
I think Arafat is really here trying to drive a wedge in this Israeli-American relation. He's trying to speak to America without speaking to Israel.
If that's true, Arafat has already been at least a partial success. He is already forcing a new debate, Dan, not just among diplomats, but also in the American Jewish community about just how much of a concession the PLO may have just made.
Wyatt, hasn't the United States objection always been that implied recognition of Israel is not enough if the PLO wants to talk to the U.S. and Israel?
Right, Dan, it's not enough. I mean, the ban on talking to the PLO will continue, but keep in mind that everybody on both sides politically understands what's going on here. Arafat can't just up and recognize Israel because that would give up all of the diplomatic leverage he has left. The U.S., for its part, can't publicly endorse this proposal, the PLO statement, too much because it has to hold out for a full recognition of Israel. The PLO, in any event, is going to get a lot of public relations points out of this, everyone acknowledges, because they have signaled a new moderation.
Wyatt Andrews, thanks. And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, Ray Brady on some help for a small-town bank that ran dry.
River don't run dry.
And Rita Braver on theories, they're only theories, that the mob could have had a part in the assassination of President Kennedy, part of our series 25 years later.